Hello everybody and welcome in this new video. The subject of this lesson will be the object-oriented programming, and we will be covering classes and objects, inheritance, and operator overloading. Let's go. So, the first thing we should ask ourselves is, what is at first the object-oriented programming? So, object-oriented programming, or just OOP for short, is a programming paradigm which provides a means of structuring programs or so that properties and behaviors are bundled into individual objects. So for instance, an object could represent, for example, a person with a name property, phone, age, address, etc. and with behaviors like, for example, learning, walking, talking, breathing, maybe something else. Of course, for example, in gaming, an object could be just a character, which also a name, for example, a max health points, mana, strength, agility, or something else, and behaviors like attacking, walking, making a magic spell, etc. Right? So this is actually what we try to say by object-oriented programming, right? And in Python, actually, we can do that by making classes. A class is a prototype for an object. So from a class, we can make many objects. For example, we can make a class of a person, and we can make several objects of persons. For example, an object will be from the person class, but with a specific name, with a specific age, etc. Okay? So instead of making every person at itself, we can make a prototype, and we will be using this prototype to make the persons easily, or the character easily, in the case of gaming. So let's try to make a class in Python. So to do that, we will just okay, so we will make class, we will give it a name. It's conventional to start with the capital letter, right? For example, a person, right? And we start. We, for example, have to make the constructor of the class init, and we can do, for example, something in this init function or init method, right? So when we call this person, for example, I say person1 equal person. Actually, when I do that, I'm executing this function right here. Okay? So here I don't have any attribute or any parameter. So for example, if I want to make the name here, for example, person, and I give the name, I need to specify here. For example, name equal norm. It's just in the case that if we didn't put anything in person, we will have name equal norm by default. If we give name equal, for example, Yusuf, right here, we will just make self.name equal name, right? So this is an attribute of this person. So self, you can see like a pointer that point on the specific object of this person class. Okay? I'm sorry, this should be like that. Okay, so now this is our class, this is our constructor, this is a pointer that will point on the specific object that we will create. For example, here person1. We give it a name and we put none for default. And we make an attribute here, the name of the person, and we give it the value given by the user or just the default value if we didn't put anything here. Right, so with this I can, for example, print person1 dot name. By that I will be accessing to the value of this name, okay, which in this case will be user. Okay, so let's try to do that. Right, so as you can see here, we have as result user. Okay, so we can, for example, have name, age, right, for example, okay, which will be age. Here we'll give age equal 0 by default. We can also have address, right, which is also address. Okay, and we will, for example, give address here, which is nothing by default, and we can add those things here. For example, age 13, address nowhere. Okay, so now I will be able to display all of these values, age and person1 dot address. Right, so let's try to see the results. And as you can see here, there are the attributes and their values. So actually this is still too bad because we are forced to put the values from the beginning. But for example, if we need, for example, to change the age or to change the address or something else, we have to make some method or some function that can allow us to change anything of the class attributes, right? So this is what we will be making for now. So let's try def change name, right? And in this function we can actually, for example, here give name and self.name will be equal name, right? So now let's just be enough with the name, and I will do person1 dot change name, and I will give, for example, Jack. Then I will print the person name. Okay, so let's try what will happen. See what will happen. Okay, so as you see here, at the first time we had the initial value given to the constructor. Okay, and this is the final value after changing it by using a method, right? So this is change name, or it's called also setter, setters and getters. If you already made a code with C++, for example, you will be familiar with those names, the getters and the setters. So this is a setter because we set the attribute to a value that we want, and the getter is just like get name, right? It's too easy, get name. And okay, there's nothing here, and we will return name. So self.name. Yes, so this actually will help us to access to the attributes of the class indirectly, okay, using a function. So instead of making or printing person.name, I will just say get name. Okay. So this is for how we can make attributes. You can make whatever attribute you want, string, list, dictionary, etc. You can do whatever you want. Okay, you can make a function here, or what's called a method. This is a method to change the name, to change everything, for example related to the class, or maybe something outside the class. Okay, and there is also something interesting. So let's try to make another person. So person will equal person, and we can give it another name. For example, here we will just call it Jonathan. For example, age 20, address. We will give it, let it like this. Okay, so now let's print person one dot get name and person two dot get name. So as you can see here, we made two objects of the class person. So this is a prototype, and these are the objects. So without the classes, we will be forced to make person one and to give it all this function right here, and to make person two and to do the same thing. But with classes, the things are really organized, are really structured. So here we have prototype, something that we can use to make objects, right? And we can do whatever we want with it. Okay, so now let's try to see the results, and here we go. Right, so Yusuf and Jonathan, which are the two names of the person number one and the person number two. Okay, so for example, this, okay, so this is for the classes and objects. So now we will be talking about inheritance, right? Inheritance is making another prototype that inherit the attributes and the methods of the parent class. Okay, so let's try to make, for example, class student, which is also a person. Okay, let's just to be conventional. Student, which inherit from the person, and we will call our constructor. Okay, and let's say okay, let's just try to take all of those. Right here and pass. So normally when we make children, when we make a child class, okay, it inherits all the attributes and all the methods of the parent class. So this student, without defining any function here called change name, by default I will be able to access to this function right here. So for example, I have person. Okay, let's make a student one equal student, right? And as you can see, I can access to dot get name. Okay, but the problem, let's see what will happen. Let's try to give, for example, those values here. Okay, let's just, okay, let's delete all of that, and let's print student dot get name. Let's see what will happen. it just said student object has no attribute name. But what I said before, normally the child should inherit everything here. But unfortunately, this doesn't happen. But why? Because we overrided the function. We overrided the init method. Okay? So we override it, so that means we will not take this in consideration, but we will take the new init function made here. So in this case, for example, we had in the parent class a method, and the child class have the same method, for example, and have some additional informations. But by just calling and defining this function, we override it, and we will not take it into consideration. So to take those things into consideration and maybe add something else, we should make super, right, and student self, and we should call init. And here, so with the super, actually, by doing this, we are calling this method. Okay, so putting something below is like taking all of that into consideration and adding some new information, for example, that are special for the students. Okay, so let's try to see what will happen right now. Run, and as you can see, we have none. Why we have none? Because right, why we have none here? Because we didn't give anything in the init, so we need to take all of that, all of those things, and put them here. Name, age, address. Because calling init without any attribute or any parameter is like calling this function without giving anything here. So it will take by default none, 0, and nothing here. So now it will happen. So we give the parameters here, and let's see what will happen. Alright, so now we have the good result. Okay. So okay, this is all about how we make a class, about the constructor, about the attributes, about making new methods, inheritance, how we can inherit. So if we want the student inherit from the person, we just have to make 2 brackets and make a person inside. If we have, for example, if the student inherit from 2 parent classes, we can add the second by putting a comma here. Okay, so this is all, and see you next time. Ciao.